Hello. Well, isn't this lovely? Gosh, I don't know how many of you were on the virtual Spring Fair last March. I think it was March. This is so much nicer. I remember being in my home office, looking at a screen, not knowing if anybody was watching, and just hoping that there were people listening, and thankfully they were. So thank you very much for coming and for joining us, for those that are watching on demand and live stream. I'm Rue, aka the Mojo Coach. I coach people in lots of different contexts, whether it can be their career, life, business, leadership, but something is always a constant in whatever context I'm coaching people, and that's helping them master a mindset that is going to help them. And that's what we're here ultimately to talk about today when we're talking about change. How you can develop a growth mindset. Because we have been on a crash course, right, for the last 2 years in change and uncertainty. And it really is challenging. I'm not going to sit here today and pretend that change is easy. It's certainly not. However, we can make it easier on ourselves to navigate and to cope with when we understand it, and we have some tools in our toolkit to make sure that we wrap our arms around it rather than kind of run the other way and try and resist it. So that's what we're here to do today. First of all, I'd like you to take a minute to rate your comfort with change. How comfortable are you with it? And it's probably not a question that you've asked yourself before. So if you think of the barometer as red is you avoid it at all costs. You make a real conscious effort to make sure that you are not surrounded by change and that you're not needed to create change internally within your business. It may be that actually you're not that so adverse to change, but you try and dodge it if possible. It could be that actually you know that it is an element of life and business and essential for growth, and so you'll go there when it's needed, but it's not something that you actively seek out. The next one is that you're kind of happy most of the time. So in most areas, then you're okay with rolling with the punches and embracing change. And the final one is that you actively seek it out. You are what we call a change agent, that you are on a mission on a daily basis to seek out change and create change yourself. So it's probably not something you've done before, but take a moment to think, where are you on that scale in your business primarily? Now, I'd love to get a show of hands. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask anybody to come up and share their experiences. But if you're kind of in the first three, so red, amber, yellow, if you're sitting there, if you just pop a little hand up. Okay, and if you're in the greens, put a hand up. So, brilliant. So I'm going to kind of put my hand up for all of them, I think, because if you're anything like me, there'll be different contexts and different situations where you will flip this barometer. But the reason I asked you that question is, first of all, for you to be honest with yourself and understand what your current relationship is with change. Because once you have that awareness, then hopefully you'll be able to take what I'm sharing today and really start relating it to you in your situation. But also, hopefully, you can see that there are other people that put their hand up who are in the same place as you. Because it's really easy when you are running a business to feel isolated, that you're the only one that struggles with this. You're the only one that's feeling this way. So hopefully you can see that you're not the only one, and change certainly is something where your comfort level can vary. So I can't talk about change without talking about it's the only constant in your life, in your business. Change is the only thing that you can guarantee. It is inevitable. So when something is inevitable like that, how do we approach it? How do we embrace it? How do we keep on going? It feels like there has been changes in the rules and expectations, in consumer trends, in how customers buy from us, how we're expected to operate and serve our customers. So how can you, when there is change all around us, especially in the retail sector, where in a way change happened overnight, and it seems to be accelerating. How can you be in a situation where you aren't a keeper of the past? Because if you aren't moving forward and you are staying present, you essentially are fossilizing your thinking and your processes. In the nicest possible way, you are becoming a fossil and you are allowing your business to become a fossil. So it's really, really important that you understand that whether you like it or not, wherever you are in that barometer, change is here and it's constant. So even if this feels hard and you don't have an appetite for embracing change, it really is essential for your businesses to thrive. So what does change mean to you? It's one word. It's one syllable. And my goodness, it can stir up such emotional thoughts and feelings. Have a think. I'm not going to ask you to share, don't worry. But what does change mean for you? What word or feeling jumps straight into your mind when somebody says, we need to change, or think things need to change? What does that conjure up for you? Now, some people like change. Some people thrive on change. Others people, absolutely, it can make them feel sick to their stomach. So it's really important that we understand why those emotional triggers are happening. So here's some of the thoughts that might have just popped up into your head. These are thoughts that I talk to with clients. Clients, when they're embracing change or trying to drive change in their business, they'll often say, I've no idea what's going to happen. This is really scary. This is all too much. Even if you know the change is going to be good for you and your business and it's something that you're driving, it can still feel very overwhelming and trigger anxiety and panic. Sometimes there can be so many options that you know that the present way isn't working, but my goodness, when you look at all the potential future options, again, it can feel very overwhelming and confusing, which can lead to procrastination and self-doubt. Well, what should I do? What's going to be the right decision? What's going to be the best way for me to approach this? There's also an element of, I don't know what to do. I've not done this before. There's the unknown. This is going to be a disaster, that good old catastrophizing, because you just don't know how things are going to go, so our brain tells us it's going to be a disaster. And that feeling of not feeling prepared, you're just not ready for this. And some of you may well have had these feelings when you were having to pivot pretty spectacularly quickly 18 months, 2 years ago, because that was an external change that was happening around us, where it literally was, we adapt and change and evolve, otherwise there probably will be no business in a year's time. So if any of these resonate with you, you recognize any of them, you're not alone. And there's a reason why our brain takes us to this place. Because it's the way we're wired. So our primal instinct is to avoid danger. So let me talk you through that. So right back in the caveman days, when it served us extremely well, our brain was helping us stay alive, okay? So let me talk you through. If you may think of something bad that may happen. So a new product range that you have launched, you're not sure it's going to fly. It's a little bit of a diversification. It's a little bit of a punt that you've taken. It may be that you are working with a new supplier. It may be that you're selling on TikTok for the first time, or Pinterest, or trying out new social media channels. There's something there, and you think it may not go well. Our brain, that primal instinct, is for your brain to see that as a perceived threat. So what that does is that flushes our body, it floods our body with stress hormones. Then we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, which means we either panic and we get ourselves into a real anxious tiz and state. We fly, so we run away, we avoid it. Or we freeze, we stay rooted. We don't take any action at all. And that isn't because anything that you're doing. It's because of the way that we're wired. Our primal instinct is where there is uncertainty, where there is the unknown, which is what change is all about, there's a threat, there's a risk, there's a danger. And therefore, our brain is hardwired to resist change, to not want to investigate how that change could impact our business, how this could really, really benefit us. So how can we start to overcome this primal instinct, which pretty much is outdated? Okay, we need to give our brains a bit of a system reboot. So if we can understand our brain, I call it the do not die machine. Okay, our brain is hardwired to keep us safe. It is not hardwired and has not got any interests at all in helping you smash your sales targets, diversify your business, set ambitious stretch goals. Your brain is not on the same page as you. Ultimately, it comes down to it needs to keep you safe. Therefore, it has faulty wiring. It starts to tell you the things like, this is scary, I don't know what to do, this is a mistake, this is probably going to go wrong. Starts the catastrophizing because it's trying to help you. It's there to protect you. But can you see how it's lacking the it's lacking the contextual awareness. So our brain is fantastic in the imagination, the problem-solving skills. It's a wonderful, wonderful organ, but it lacks the contextual awareness that you are not going to die if you launch a new product range. But the response to that change and that potential threat is the same, that there's a tiger outside the cave. So it's recognizing that your brain is kind of lying to you at times. So it's understanding that not always listening to the messages that your brain is telling you will serve you well. That's why I'm talking about mindset today, because we need to effectively do a system update, right? We need to update the system as if we're a computer. We can do that by managing our mindset. So how do we, this natural response is here, it's inbuilt, it's the way we're wired. So how can we start to overcome that and live alongside that and still push ourselves out of our comfort zone within our businesses, embrace change, and do things that have got a level of uncertainty to them? So if we're going to talk about mindset, let's take a moment to think what it is. In a word, it's a frame of mind. Okay, I like to think of it as the lens that you wear, the outlook, the way that you see yourself and the world around you and others. It's a collection of thoughts, of feelings, of expectations, perceptions, and it's hugely, hugely important to how you create scenarios, plan decisions. Here's a really good example. These 6 people, imagine that these 6 people all run their own businesses, and they're all in the midst of a real transformational change in their business. Can you see that they're all in very different headspaces? Frustration, confused, overwhelm, excitement, celebration, worry. I'm not sure what the guy in the top left's doing. He kind of looks slightly nervous, but excited at the same time. The only difference between these people is their mindset. It's the lens that they're choosing to view the world around them, their own abilities, their own competencies with. That's why I'm here today, to help you understand mindset so then you can wrap your arms around change. So let's look. An open mindset will be curious. You'll be excited and interested and wondering what could happen, what the potential outcome could be, how will this go, versus blinkered, versus a very, very narrow way of looking at the situation around you. Purposeful, that you are looking at achieving a certain outcome, achieving a certain goal, versus stagnant. Remember that term, that in the nicest possible way, if you don't embrace change, you are fossilizing the way you think, the way you operate your processes. So having purpose and vision within your business and then how you show up within your business. Non-judgmental, that there's not a good idea, a bad idea, a wrong or a right way to proceed. And opposite, very opinionated. That's not going to work. That isn't going to work, or that's the wrong person, that's the wrong decision. Non-judgmental is very much more kind of suck it and see. Let's see where this takes us. Optimistic. If you are truly going to embrace change and become a change agent and develop a growth change mindset, you've got to believe that it's not all going to end in disaster. You are not going to die. That's the pessimistic, closed mindset of you huddled in your cave thinking, I want to stay away from anything that might upset status quo, challenge status quo. And finally, accepting that change is inevitable. It's part of the way we're going to grow our business, rather than resenting change when it comes, feeling quite bitter and angry that you need to change, or things are changing, or your customers' purchasing habits are changing, or the way that suppliers want to deal with you are changing, or regulations are changing. That resentment, that bitterness, accepting and almost expecting that it is going to happen. Because as we said, change is the one constant that we can always, always guarantee. So hopefully you can see that because we've got this faulty wiring, we can be emotionally hijacked. What does that look like? So that's when we ask ourselves things like, but what if X happens? And what if I fail? Can you see how they're emotionally charged questions and statements? They are leading you to catastrophize, to think about the very worst thing. Remember me saying our brain is amazing with its imagination. It can imagine some pretty disastrous scenarios when you look ahead. So, for example, you are going to launch a new range, something that is a world away from something you've done in the past. But you can see that that's where the market's going. Your customers are asking for that. It makes sense, but emotionally, you are fueled with doubt. Therefore, you will build up the most wonderful, disastrous scenarios because you've essentially been hijacked by these primal emotions that are automatic emotions. Flip the switch to, okay, so what's the opposite of emotional thinking? It's rational thinking. We start asking ourselves, but what will help me? Okay, so I may feel that I don't know what's going to happen. I may feel unprepared. But what will help me right now? That's a rational, logical question that's going to strip out the emotion. Asking yourself, what do I need? Do I need to outsource, to delegate? Do I need a mentor? Do I need some training? What do I need? What's going to help me navigate this chapter? And most importantly, anybody who's seen me speak at previous spring fairs and autumn fairs or know me knows that this is my number one. When you are navigating a period of uncertainty or change, control the controllables. How do you do that? First, by asking yourself, what can I control? Because then you will start to really grab hold of things that are in your grasp, where there is not the same perceived threat. So why do we need to switch to become a rational thinker when we're dealing with change? You are going to find it much easier to recognize opportunities when you're thinking rationally. And you're also going to be able to identify the gains of change. So I'm not here talking to you about how to embrace change in your business because I love change and that I think that you should all become change agents because it's a great way to spend your time. The only reason why we ultimately want to embrace change is because of the output. What's going to happen when we do embrace change in terms of streamlining processes, efficiencies, keeping fresh, staying ahead of the times, being relevant, improvements in processes, diversification, all of that good stuff that comes for when we change the way we are showing up and the way we're doing business. So how can we start to create the change confidence toolkit? How can you become this change agent? How can you be somebody who doesn't shy away from change and actually is actively looking for change where it will serve your business well? We need to put mindset before strategy. I'm going to give you an example of a client that I worked with last year. She was a very, very smart, switched-on woman. She had been in her sector for over 15 years. She knew exactly what she wanted to achieve. There was no self-doubt. There was no procrastination in terms of her strategy, her direction. She knew who she was selling to, what she was selling to them, why they were buying from her, and how she was going to sell to them. We together created a killer strategy. She had a fantastic plan. It was a really enjoyable coaching experience for me because this businesswoman knew exactly what she was doing and how she was going to do it. Things started to get tricky when she needed to take action, when she actually needed to take that step, when she actually needed to make a change. For her mindset, all of this stuff then started coming into play. She was emotionally hijacked. So you can have a killer strategy and a fantastic business plan. If you aren't combining that with a winning mindset, you will never be reaching your full potential. You'll always be pumping the brakes. And part of my job when I coach people is to spot where that resistance is coming, because sometimes it's really hard to recognize. Hopefully today, when I've explained some of the ways that resistance to change can manifest itself, but it's really tricky to notice sometimes that you are tapping on the brakes because you tell yourself excuses like it's not the right time. I should wait. I haven't got enough money right now. We tell ourselves, again, our brain is very, very good at this self-protection mechanism. So, how do we put mindset before strategy? We need to recognize where our mind is taking us. That's about getting out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is safe and comfy and warm. It's a nice place to be. It's very stagnant. It's really comfortable, but it's not compatible with change. So we need to be able to be in a place where we are okay with moving out of our comfort zone. So what happens when we move out of our comfort zone? We need to make our move. We need to take that step. We are automatically going to jump straight into our fear zone because we're hardwired, remember, that we don't know what's going to happen with the change. Therefore, we have this automatic primal fear response. Knowing that this is where you're going to go, knowing that you will be stepping into a fear zone, first of all, makes you you're expecting it. You're understanding why your heart might be racing, why this self-doubt might be kicking in. But also, the trick here is to move through the fear zone as quickly as possible, which is what I'm going to show you some practical techniques to do today. Because this is what happens when you're in the fear zone. You're affected by others' opinions, you find excuses, your confidence all of a sudden, and this is exactly what happened with the wonderful client I was coaching last year. All of this kicked in. The excuses were, oh, maybe I need to get some investment before I do this. Maybe I need to do a really small trial before I take this leap. Being affected by others' opinions. Imagine if you've never sold or had a presence on Pinterest or TikTok before. Okay, so you may be doing Facebook, Instagram, online sales, but the world of TikTok and Pinterest, you know that your customers are there, you know that your competitors are doing well in that space. So you take the move to be there, but you're super affected by other people's opinions. So it may be a customer, it may be a peer, a mentor. I wouldn't have done it like that. Oh, I'm surprised you did that. That's an interesting move. That will go straight here. That will hit you hard and go, whoa, oh, maybe I shouldn't have, was that a mistake? Now think about when you're in your comfort zone. If somebody says to you, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that, that's interesting. Straight away you go, oh yeah, no. Well, I've done it like that because of this. Or you don't even, the statement and their opinion doesn't even register. It just flies on right past because you're in your comfort zone. So you're confident and comfortable in your abilities and your competence. When you're in your fear zone, all of that anchoring has gone. So recognizing that that's why you are feeling unsteady. That's why it can feel very wobbly when you step out your comfort zone. When we move through our fear zone, that's where we get to our learning zone. That's where you start acquiring new skills, asking yourself those questions that I talked about with the rational thinker. Put the emotion to one side. The rational thinker will be saying, what skills do I need to acquire? What do I need to do to deal with this challenge? What's going to help me? And can you see, as we start to move through, we start to extend our comfort zone because we start doing these things. And surprise, surprise, there isn't a disaster. So you start to think, okay, I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with this. I didn't know what was going to happen. I wasn't sure how things were going to go. But okay, my comfort zone is extending slowly. And the more time you spend in your learning zone, the nearer you will get to your growth zone, which is ultimately why you've stepped out of your comfort zone in the first place, right? Because you want to grow personally, professionally, and probably your bottom line in your business. So that is when you will achieve, you'll boost your performance, you'll adapt, you'll often find new purpose and evolve your business. That's how your business will evolve and grow and stay ahead of the times, stay fresh, stay current. But none of that will happen whilst you are in your comfort zone. Now, the trick here, as I said, is to move through your fear zone as quickly as possible. A lot of the people I work with get stuck in this kind of bungee jump action between comfort zone and fear zone. So they know they're in their comfort zone. They know they need to change. So they make a change, but the fear paralyzes them. So then they kind of jump back into comfort zone. Now, we really need to avoid jumping from comfort zone to fear zone, because that gets extremely demotivating, extremely tiring, and really, really bashes your self-confidence and self-belief. So it's super important that when you step out of your comfort zone, you have purpose, clarity, you have stripped the emotion out of your thinking, so you are 100% focused on how you are going to reach that wonderful green grass of the growth zone. So how do you travel through the zones? How do you make that leap? And I often talk about that, the black arrow being like a tightrope. If you were about to walk out onto a tightrope for the first time in a circus, I can assure you, you would not do that without training, without a safety net below, with somebody probably in your ear saying to you, right, well, look ahead, I'm with you, breathing, don't look down. Why do we expect ourselves to take quite ambitious strides in our businesses and take these huge leaps out of our comfort zone without any of that support, without any of that preparation? Because we tell ourselves that we should know this. Other people around us are doing this. I'm a businesswoman. I should know what I'm doing. Or a businessman. My competitors are doing this. My customers want this. It doesn't make sense. So we need to make sure that we're being kind to ourselves as we travel through these zones. So how do we do that? First of all, we go at your pace. Okay, so a baby step for some may be literally just setting up a TikTok account, if I use that example, and seeing what other people are doing. That is enough out of your comfort zone for you for next week. Others, it may be set up an account, follow people, experiment with hashtags, do some quick reels that you've already grabbed from Instagram. That could be a baby step. So there's no right or wrong. And that's, again, when I work with people, there's no blueprints for how to do things. You create your own blueprint that is going to work for you. It's super important that you work at your pace. Being realistic. Again, remember that tightrope analogy. To think that you are going to be able to visit a circus for the first time and step out onto that tightrope and nail it. You're not going to falter. You're not going to feel panicky. You're not going to look down. You are going to get across to the other side first time. It's totally unrealistic. So please don't set yourself up for failure by being overly ambitious and unrealistic. Embrace support. Now, that can be a mentor, a colleague, a loved one, a networking group, a coach, could be training, anything. But please, please embrace support when you are in a period of change, creating change, stepping out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you're making it super, super hard for yourself and for no reason. This doesn't need to be even more challenging than change itself is. And keep your eye on the prize. This is so important. When we are operating with uncertainty, things will happen that we weren't expecting. Things will happen which we didn't. So keeping your eye on the prize, knowing why are you making these changes, really having clarity on what is the impact going to be? How is this going to be advantageous to you and what you're doing? It's really important, again, looking through what does that growth zone look like for you. So when there's a wobble, when there's a bit of a detour, it's okay because you can just recalculate that sat nav and keep your eye on that destination, keep your eye on the prize. So we can get comfortable being uncomfortable. No one enjoys, if they really put their hand on their heart, being out of their comfort zone all of the time, especially when the stakes are high, especially when it's whether your business is going to be viable in a year's time, or if you've got salaries to pay or rent to pay, bills to pay. It's going to be uncomfortable, but that's okay, because you can get used to that. You can get comfortable with those feelings if you work hard to make sure you aren't being emotionally hijacked, and you have a strategy and a plan for how you're going to make sure that what's up here is on your side. It's not trying to sabotage you. So how do we get comfortable when we're not in our safe, warm comfort zone? We need to reframe fear. When I talked about that primal instinct, that is anchored in fear. Something can go wrong. You may look silly. You may waste money. All of the disasters, the catastrophes are rooted in fear. So how do we do that? Try flipping your vocabulary, okay? This might sound really simple, but it works. And it's something that you can start doing as soon as you get up from the bench and walk away. I am worried. Flip that to I am curious. So you don't know what's going to happen. There's a level of uncertainty and concern about what's going to happen. So rather than worrying about what's going to happen, just relabel. That feeling's still there, but you've relabeled it to curious. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm curious. So, for example, today, I haven't presented on a weekday before. I was presented at the Autumn Fair at the weekend. I had a feeling of, I wonder how many people are going to come today. I wonder what it's going to be like. I did not label that feeling as worry, because then that takes me down a rabbit hole. I'm curious. I'm curious how the day's going to go. I'm curious how people are going to receive what I've got to say. Can you see how flipping? It sounds like such a simple thing to do, but I can assure you it's so effective. Another one is nerves. I'm nervous. You're excited. It's still that same feeling, those butterflies in your tummy, that dry throat, that kind of, oh gosh, waking up and feeling a bit sick. You can label it nerves, which will then very, very quickly escalate to anxiety, stress, overwhelm, or you can label it excited. It's adrenaline. These feelings are here because I'm doing something that is out of my comfort zone, that matters to me, that's important. I'm excited. I'm scared. Again, that fear. We're only human, right? We don't embarrass ourselves. We don't want to fail. So that fear, that feeling is valid, it's there, but how we label it. So instead of being scared and fearful, which will lead you to run away and hide in your cave again, I'm exhilarated, I'm ready for this, I'm pumped. That being ready to come out of your cave, kind of ready for action, rather than kind of going, oh, I'm coming out the cave, but I really don't want to. And this self-doubt and procrastination, I talk to so many people about this. You're unsure. You may be not sure what the most helpful decision is going to be, what the best approach is going to be. You're unsure what's going to happen. Flip that to say, I'm undecided. So if somebody says to you, so what do you think you're going to do for, gosh, I don't know, for your, it could be anything as simple as your shop window. What's your shop window going to be like at Christmas? Oh, I don't know what to do. I'm unsure. I saw that they'd done a great window there, but then I've been thinking about maybe putting a big screen up. Oh, I'm just unsure. Oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, gosh. And could you see how that all of a sudden puts you in this mindset of, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not very competent. I'm questioning myself. Oh, gosh. So I'm undecided. I don't know yet. I've not made a decision. Can you see how much more positive, empowering, and in control you are by saying, I don't know yet. I've not made a decision yet. I'm undecided. Rather than, I'm unsure, I don't know what to do. Oh, goodness me, I don't know if this is the right decision. Oh, I'm just going to park this. I'm just going to come back to it next week. Flipping your vocabulary is a really simple way. So those feelings are going to be there, but the words that you use to label those feelings have a direct impact to the lens that you wear when you're looking at that specific problem, wherever you are. And again, this is in life and business. The next quick way of helping to retrain and reprogram your brain is to be aware of thinking with your feelings. So let me explain what I mean by there. I feel out of my depth, okay? So that can be a feeling. Then you think, I am out of my depth. So you can feel out of your depth. You've not done this before, okay? This is uncharted territory. You can feel out of your depth. It doesn't mean that you are out of your depth. It doesn't mean that you've bitten off more than you can chew. It doesn't mean that this isn't going to end well. You can feel a certain way. That feeling can sit here, and then your thoughts and your mindset and how you show up can be here. It's creating a distance between unhelpful thoughts, because we all know that feelings lead to thoughts, and thought leads to action. Another example is I feel unprepared. Okay, so you can feel that you've just not prepared enough. I had a client who could just not plan. She was a course director. She ran a training school. She couldn't prepare the courses enough, prep the delegates enough, send out instructions enough, make sure that all the the T's were crossed and the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. She never felt prepared enough. That doesn't mean that she was unprepared. By anybody else's standards, she was ridiculously prepared and professional, but she felt unprepared because she was a perfectionist and she'd set the bar so high. But again, can you see that you can feel unprepared, but that doesn't mean that you are. That doesn't mean that you're not ready to take that step. So again, your feelings are emotions. And if we really link arms with those emotions and allow them to embed in our psyche and our mindset, we are opening ourselves up to be hijacked. And as you hopefully see, when we're hijacked by our emotions, we are switching off that rational part of our brain. And the rational part of our brain is what helps us think logically. It keeps us present and calm. So before I leave you, I want to share with you my 4 superpowers when it comes to thriving in change, and hopefully they'll become your 4 superpowers as well as you start to practice some of this. The first one might sound really simple, okay, but try something different every day. We are creatures of habit, okay? We need change to become a habit. So we need to be doing something different, trying something new. We need that to become habitual behavior so it becomes the norm. So you only do that by making it a habit, by doing something different every day. Now, that doesn't need to be life-changing, okay? And it certainly is not giving you a permission slip to go and rock somebody else's world on a daily basis by changing things constantly, okay? Because that will never, ever end well and will lead people to just not quite knowing where they are. But it is about creating your personal agility with change. So personally, how can you become more flexible and agile? So change becomes part of the way you operate. So can that be how you organize things, updating things, doing things in different order, trying a different approach? Think about what you can do every day if possible, and it can be small things. Thinking about, because it just starts introducing to your brain that you don't always have to do things in a certain way that are comfortable, that you can do in autopilot. And again, change will not happen when you're in autopilot mode. You've got to be awake and driving the car. You can't be switched onto autopilot and gazing out the window. Look ahead. So what's going to happen? We know that change is inevitable and it's constant. So doesn't it make sense to kind of understand and prepare and even predict what might happen? When we're looking ahead, rather than looking in the rear view mirror, looking at what you did well, what you didn't do well, absolutely there is a role for that to make sure we reflect and learn. But we've got to be looking ahead. We've got to have our eyes on the future and what's going to happen. So how can you do that? Read about innovations and developments. Keep yourself fresh. Coming to events like this, having your eyes open, being plugged into your sector, see what people are talking about. Magazines, blogged, keep plugged in to the areas where you are looking to really embrace change and move change forward. So keep looking ahead rather than being very present and looking in the past. I've talked about being curious. This is a big one for me. If you think if it ain't broke, don't fix it, that isn't a mantra that's going to help you be flexible, agile with change, and embrace change. Does it still work is not the barometer of if whether things need to change or not. So an example are checks, okay? Making payment by checks. That process still works, right? It's not broken. But actually, is it really in accordance with today's purchasing habits and how people are buying online and the instant transfer of money, et cetera, et cetera? Absolutely no. There are much, much more kind of, better ways to transfer payment. But just because it's not broken doesn't mean that you don't need to change it. So if you are asking yourself in your business, at all levels of your business, and this would be a challenge for you, set some homework, go away and think about the various elements and buckets of your business and go, okay, are you looking, or does it still work? You're probably going to go, yeah, it still works. You're all still running viable businesses. But that doesn't mean that in 6 months' time it will become outdated, it will be fossilized. So be curious. Think, but how could it work differently? What could a better approach be? Put your thinking cap on and spend some time thinking about what could be a different way of approaching this problem or addressing this or showing up. And create options. So I've talked about agility, flexibility in our mindset and our approach. If we're rigid in the way that we see a solution, so if we're very black and white and there's only one option, then we'll stick to the script, okay? There's less risk. So remember, our brains are hardwired for less risk. So we'll go, oh yeah, it needs to change. We'll do one option, and that's what we're going to do. When you create options, and I would always recommend to try and aim between 2 and 8 options, you generally come up with a solution that's a hybrid. So you've got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then you've got actually a really robust, well-rounded solution that is going to really help you move where you want to go. So think about now when you often think about, okay, we've got a problem with X. Do you often just jump straight in and think of one solution? And you're so relieved you found a solution. Oh, brilliant. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to go for it. Now, I'm not saying that might not be the best solution, but allow yourself to look at all the other potential options that you may just want to steal a little bit from. So when you are out of your comfort zone, when you are in your change zone, you're making sure that you aren't emotionally hijacked. Please stick to think about these 4 superpowers, because if you can embrace these 4 superpowers, you'll be flying high with your cape on, and you'll be looking down, and you'll be feeling very, very pleased with yourself when you are seeing the change happen around you. So how can you move the needle? How can you go? If you were somewhere around, even if you were actively already seeking out change, how can you move the needle more? How can you really, really start to become this change agent so you can see real transformational change in your business? You need to take action, okay? What opportunities can you identify? And again, these don't need to be huge restructure, huge kind of changes. This can be small opportunities, but I can assure you there'll be opportunities that either you're choosing not to identify because it's just too hard to think about and you can't think of a solution right now, or it's just far too overwhelming. Or maybe you've not asked yourself that question for quite a long time, because we're all there, yeah? You're busy working and running your business. You're working in your business. All of the stuff that I've talked about today requires you to step out and work on your business. And that's something that may not come naturally, and you might not have the time to do. So try and ring-fence some time to identify the opportunities that exist. Think about how you can start to stretch out of your comfort zone. Remember I talked about how to travel through those zones. What would some baby steps look like for you? What would it look like for you to start learning new skills, stretching out of not knowing exactly what's going to happen? Think about what that looks like for you, and it'll be very individual. And then again, as I talked about, we are creatures of habit. You really want change and the inevitable kind of evolving nature to become a habit. You want every day that you are in this change state. It becomes something that you are, that you do. So to summarize, what's your change toolkit? How can you become confident in change? And again, it's not just so you can wear a badge and go, I'm really confident with change. It's so you can realize what the outcome is when you make a change. Be a rational thinker. Really try and identify where your emotions are hijacking you. Where are your thinking and your thought processes sabotaging you? Move out of your comfort zone. It's not got to be huge strides and huge leaps, but try, if you feel that you are sitting in autopilot or that you really prefer to be in your comfort zone, think about how you can start moving yourself out of it. Reframe fear, because when you start to do anything that's outside of your comfort zone, anything to do with change and uncertainty, fear's going to kick in. It's the way we're wired. So nip it in the bud very early on. Use different words to label those thoughts and feelings and reframe it. Use it as something that charges you in terms of adrenaline and curiosity rather than fear. And use your 4 superpowers. Okay, so remember to try something new every day. Look ahead. Be curious and create options. When you are in a place where you're thinking of solutions, don't just stick with the easy way. Create a massive solutions for yourself. And then, as I talked about my client last year, you can kind of do all of the above, but if you don't take action, that ultimately it comes down to is not just taking action, but taking specific action that is rational, that has a purpose, that is going to take you out of your comfort zone, is going to help you thrive and embrace change. And I can assure you that if you can start to nurture a mindset that doesn't run and avoid change, but links arms with it, you will absolutely reap the benefits, personally and professionally. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for attending. You can find me. There's not many Davies and there's not many Mojo coaches, so just type into Google if you want to. I generally hang out on Instagram. I share lots of hints and tips. Kind of love jumping on stories and reels. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. Thank you for coming. Any questions at all? We've got time, I think, for some questions. Or you can, if you don't want to ask in front of the crowd, you can come up at the end if you'd prefer. Thank you.